No, we can't turn back now. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down tonight. Only just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna light it up tonight. We gonna light it up tonight. We gonna light it up just like the sunrise. We gonna light it up now.
Hello, hello. Welcome to the HVAC God live show where we talk about all things HVAC that no one else is talking about. Special episode tonight. Obviously, there's a lot going on. Election night. Take a break from the election. We're not going to know who's going to win anytime soon anyway. So take a break. Either you're sick of it and you need a break, or maybe you're watching that in the background, and hopefully you can focus on this fat face for a couple hours and let us, chat it up a little bit here and talk about some stuff here. But let's start out by saying hello to the folks in the chat. If you are watching us, feel free to drop a hello and where you're located in the country in the chat. Bob, one of our longtime watchers, good to see you, buddy. He says, I was watching the election returns, but it may take up to a week or more for results. Kind of crazy in today's day and age, isn't it? I'm from the great town of Tomball in Texas. No kidding. So good to see you, Bob. Smokey says, sorry, watching president election coverage tonight. No problem. No problem. Like I said, if you are watching us, take a break from all that. You're like I say, we're not going to know who's going to win anytime soon anyway. So hopefully you guys can tune in. And actually, my wife said, are you going to do the show tonight? And I said, you know what? There are people that show up every week, every single week to tune in and watch. And even if we've got low numbers tonight, I'm going to do the show. I'm going to do it, So good to see you, Junior, out in Los Angeles. Let's see, Los Angeles. So it's probably what, 4:30. It's not even 5:00 for you yet, pal. So good to see you here. Or is it? Am I doing my math right there? 1, 2. No, it might be 5:30 there. Might be 5:30. So anyway, I got a crazy story I want to start tonight's show out with. Let's see. See if I can switch over to that screen. And it is our featured story tonight. I thought it was interesting, and thought I would share that with you guys. It says, hopefully you guys can still hear me. Presidents, geez Louise, you can tell where my mind is tonight. Prisoners plead. Can I get this thing off of here? Should be able to get that off of there. There we go. Prisoners plead for air conditioning in a lawsuit against Florida Corrections Department, Tallahassee, Florida. So this is apparently, probably a bigger deal back in the summer, but we're just now getting, it says this story launched on November 2nd. So that would have been a couple days ago, 3 days ago. And so obviously, it's probably not as hot now, but you know how the court systems go. In Tallahassee, Florida, it was the hottest September in more than a century in parts of South Florida, and Dwayne Wilson could hear his 81-year-old fellow inmate gasping for breath and crying out for help at the Dade, I think that says Dade, Correctional Institution 45 miles southwest of Miami on the edge of the Florida Everglades. So that is down. I mean, Miami stays hot, right? And if we're 45 miles southwest of Miami, then I bet she is warm. The elderly man was confined to a wheelchair and for weeks had been complaining of severe chest pain and difficulty breathing in the unventilated dorm where he was serving his sentence. According to a federal class action lawsuit filed this week on behalf of Wilson and two other inmates at the prison, early on the morning of September 24th, the wheelchair bound inmate, who is identified in the lawsuit as JB, was heard once again begging for help. According to the lawsuit, a prisoner wheeled him to the infirmary where within 15 minutes medical staff ordered him to return to his cell, according to legal filings. Soon after, JB was found unresponsive, his mouth gaping open, the lawsuit says. Oh man, this is painful just reading. Attorneys said that on the day of the 81 on the day the 81-year-old died, the exhaust fans in his dorms weren't working and the heat index had climbed to 104 degrees. Jeez Louise. It's almost, I mean, you get any higher than that, you're almost being cooked. Living in the prison's unair conditioned cells could feel like being locked in a sardine can with no air to breathe, an inmate identified in the lawsuit as GM said, and the heat had taken a toll. The lawsuit filed this week by the prison reform advocacy group Florida Justice Institute says that the heat at the facility has contributed to the deaths of 4 people there and that prison officials have failed to take meaningful action to mitigate the risk posed to the elderly and disabled inmates in their care. The lawsuit, which names the Florida Department of Corrections, the secretary of the department, and the warden of DCI, as defendants, argues that the conditions violate the protections of the Eighth Amendment, which bar cruel and unusual punishment, as well as the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Rehabilitation Act. We had to file a lawsuit because they've thus far ignored the concerns of incarcerated people and their advocates, and so it appears they need a court to order them to do what they should have done on their own, said Andrew Oodlesman, an attorney for the Florida Justice Institute. So you guys kind of get the picture. This is an even longer article, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up there. But pretty sad story. Thoughts go to that poor fella. It's a rough way to go. In a world where air conditioning is, more, important than, so I heard someone saying that, because let me back up. I've heard people say, well, what about all the years that we didn't have air conditioning? And that's true. We went, centuries without air conditioning, but, our world is, we've become acclimated to certain conditions. Our bodies are used to a certain, way of living. And so there's something to be said for that. But regardless of what the past held, 104 degrees is 104 degrees. I mean, that is way too hot. I don't care what century you live in, you know. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. I mean, it's a pretty sad story there. Hopefully, you know, I'm not hoping that anyone, is this thing going to let me switch? I'm trying to switch back to our, bear with me. My screen is slowing down and I'm trying to move back to the regular screen here. There we go. Um, is this going to work? Yeah, so I just think that, pretty sad story nonetheless. So let me know your thoughts in the chat. Obviously 104 degrees is pretty hot. Again, if you're watching us, take a break from the election tonight. Let's chat about some stuff. We're not going to know who the winner is yet anyway, so feel free to take a break from that. Smokey says, or I'm sorry. Uh, sorry, watching. Sorry, we already covered that. Junior said, Junior, Los Angeles, California, 5:30 p.m. So okay, so it is after work. So yeah, I've been watching the election stuff, I will say, and it's crazy how tight everything is. You know, you want to talk about a country that is split down the middle. We are split down the middle. There's no doubt about that. Uh, there's no certainties right now. There's no landslide victories. So, but yeah, I mean, we're not going to know who's our next president's going to be anytime soon anyway. So take a break from that and let's chat about some heating and air stuff here. I've had a crazy week. I'm not going to lie. I had a meeting with the folks that own the company that I work for, and they've made a bunch of changes to our class schedule. So I'm kind of dealing with that. And to be honest with you, I've taken a few on the chin this week. So that's always fun when folks come at you a little bit. So dealing with a little bit of that. And it's just been a crazy week. Been a very interesting week on that point on that front. So I'm ready to turn a few things off and kind of step away and talk about some heating and air stuff, if nothing else. Stuff that we always talk about here every week. Let's see. I'm going to try to geez Louise, the amount of problems I have with this computer. And of course, they're always on the live show. I never have issues outside of the live show. Um I want to switch gears and hop over to the polls that we have been running this week. And we actually had a couple polls on our channel. Let me see if I can hop over to that. Bear with me here. Um Bob says 90 degrees and high humidity feels like 114 degrees. Yeah, it's just too hot, man. I mean, I know what some people are thinking. Oh, well, they're in prison. They shouldn't be comfortable anyway. And maybe there's a little truth to that, right? Depending on what they did. But there's also something to be said for the guy was 81 years old, right? I mean, and the poor fella passed away. I mean, that's a rough way to go. Ryan says, forgot about the show with all the stuff going on today. It's been crazy. I went and voted, and I've been voting at the location that I vote at, and I vote every year that I can. So I'm not one of those people that only votes on presidential years. And today was probably the busiest I've ever seen the polling. I mean, the location that I vote at. So it was busy. It was definitely busy. But good to see you, Ryan. Thanks for joining us. Um, let's see. Can I get trying to get over to our poll here? Switch to here. Um, one of the polls we did this week. Okay, so here we go. Can I share this? Hopefully you guys can see that. Um, it says, have you ever repaired your own HVAC system before? And what I thought was interesting is I'll come back to the first and the fifth one, because what I think is interesting is they're even. I mean, they're like dead even, 31% on both. So we had 84 of you guys vote, and 18% says I was able to repair something simple. So maybe they don't do their own repairs, but there was something simple that they were able to take care of. 14% says I only call a pro when it's something complicated. So they definitely they take care of everything that is less complicated. I think is basically what we're saying there, and that they only call a pro when they have to. 6% says I feel like I know more than most pros. So 6% of you guys said that you feel like you know more than the pros themselves. But again, I thought that the first and the fifth one were the most interesting because they're probably the most opposite. So the first one is never. I call a pro every time. So 31% of you said that. And then 31% of you said, I do all my own repairs. I don't call pros for anything. And so I thought that was interesting. Interesting little poll that we did there. Let me see. Let me switch back to our chat here while I pull up the second poll. I will tell you guys before I switch to the second poll that we did this week, that we are coming out with a video very soon that is different than anything I've ever done. So stay tuned to our YouTube channel. We took to the streets. We went around, almost like if you've ever seen those either those YouTubers or TikTokers that are kind of standing on the street asking drunk college kids a bunch of stupid stuff. We went to the streets and asked homeowners about their heating and air systems, and I thought that some of the questions and really the answers we were getting, I thought were quite interesting. Um, but we've got a video coming up with some of that we will show, and so I thought that was interesting. Ryan says, I tested my own capacitor for the first time on Saturday with Cortland. I think I've watched 200 capacitor replacement videos and still asked him to do it. I just wanted to use the meter. Good enough. So, did you do it with the unit running? Which method did you do? Did you do an actual microfarad test with the unit off, or did you do one of the tests with it running? I always do the test with it off. I don't really understand the advantage of doing it the other way, but it's never benefited me in residential to do it any other way. But I know there are methods of doing it while it's running. And again, I see some of you guys are popping in here. You know, stay tuned. uh, take a break from the election. I know that there's a lot going on tonight. We're not going to know who the winner is tonight anyway, or just let that play in the background while we chat about HVAC. So take a break from the election, and you're not going to know who's going to win anytime soon anyway. So let's just chat it up here. John says your wife calls me when she needs a plumber. Your wife calls me when she needs a plumber. I don't even know what that means. I don't know if you're saying my wife calls you, because I'm sure that is not true. Maybe you're just joking. I don't know. Ryan says did the microfarad test. So nice. Ryan says that should be an interesting video. I would think most people don't know the brand they have or if they have a furnace or heat pump. Um that is part of what we talk about with them. That is you got it. You're hitting the nail on the head there. Um let's see. Give me 1 second here. Um okay, just removing hoo-ha. So um Philip says, hey Ryan and Josh, do you know if the Daikin Atmosphera R32 supports the Daikin 1 touch? The S21 is 4-pin in the unit versus the harness is 5-pin. Um, so hold on 1 second here. My wife is texting me about the election. um, Philip, I think I can answer your question, but hold on 1 second here. Let's see. Okay. Um, so I think the main thing is that the Daikin, any of the Daikin ductless systems, any of them but the intra, I think can be supported with the Daikin one. Um, with the plus or the touch. So there we go. I finally got that guy removed from our chat. That's what I was working on. Okay, I was having trouble figuring it out. Um, but so any of the ductless products other than the intra, you should be able to. So it does have to have an adapter, but I'm pretty sure you can do the touch or the plus. I could be wrong on that. If one of you guys know better, but I'm pretty sure you can. Uh, but I'll be honest, I've never used the touch with a mini split, so I could be wrong on that. Um, do you know if the Daikin Atmosphere R32 supports the Daikin One Touch? I might be wrong on that actually. I'm actually going to check on that tomorrow. Um, because now that I think about it, I don't think I have seen anyone use the touch for that. It's always been the plus. So Daikin touch with mini splits. Um, yeah. So I live in the great state of Virginia, and she's texting me and telling me that the polls are closer than they thought on Virginia. So that's interesting because Virginia, when I was a kid, Virginia was a swing state. It was purple, but it's been very blue because of Northern Virginia for the longest time. For a number of years now, for a couple decades almost. So anyway, Ryan says the Daikin One Plus is mentioned in the Atmosphere website only. I bet you're right. Just because I haven't seen anybody use a touch, so I don't know why they would do that, but I bet that's what it is. Um, I bet that's what it is. So anyway, I I'm also in a group chat with my wife and her family, and they are blowing it up, talking about stuff. So I need to ignore that for a minute. What do you guys think? Just out of curiosity, I think that we live in a crazy time. That's what I think. In fact, I think I told you guys a couple weeks ago we went to DC and recorded a video of some stuff. I don't know if I want to give it away what all we recorded, but I will say it's probably one of the funnest videos I've ever recorded. And we're just waiting on approvals from all of the folks that need to approve it before I can launch that video. I wanted it to come out before the election just because of all the stuff going on. I thought it would do well, right? A video about Washington DC, but I I was not able to get that done. So, Philip, I thought you had a thermostat installed with your new Atmosphere. So, I don't know what thermostat that would be. I thought unless it's the one of those third party thermostats that act like a remote. I think the Cielo and the Honeywell used to have that D6, I think it was called, which they discontinued that thermostat. And then Flare is another one I know of that's a third party. Supposed to show my Daikin listed installer, didn't know why. One thing that's cool, I think I'm allowed to say this because they've already done press releases on it. I can tell you that a bunch of the Daikin mini splits that are going to be coming out in the future are going to have Wi-Fi already enabled right out of the box. So if you did not get that, please don't be mad at me. But that is something they're going to offer in the future on some of the models that currently you have to add a module to it to make it Wi-Fi enabled. They're going to be making, I don't want to say which ones because I don't know what has been released, but I can tell you it's on a bunch of them. It's not on all, I don't think, but I do know it's on a bunch. So I think I'm allowed to say that because I've sat through webinars at my company where they promoted that. So it's supposed to be the one touch. I'll have to look into that, buddy. But um I think Ryan might be right on that only because I have not seen anybody use the plus. I mean, I'm sorry, the touch. I've only seen the plus so far, but I don't know. I don't know until I look into it tomorrow. I'll have to go on one of their internal websites to make that happen. So, um Ryan says the Atmosphere has Wi-Fi built in. Perfect. Okay, that's what I was worried about. That y'all are going to be mad at me if y'all just bought one and found out that it's not already enabled in there. So I've got an Aurora that is about a year or two old now, and it is not Wi-Fi enabled. So I was going to try one of the third party thermostats on it, and do a little video on that, but we'll see. I'm not sure what I'm going to do on that front yet. Right now, I just set it and forget it. So anyway, if you are just joining us, looks like a couple more people just popped in. Say hello. Where are you from? If you got a heating and air question, feel free to drop that in there. Take a break from the election. We're not going to know anything anytime soon anyway. So, watch this fat face. Let it play in the background if you want. Let's talk about some fun stuff. I I did have that other poll set up here. And so the other poll we did says, "Are you concerned?" I thought this was an interesting one because I did, this could have went who knows how. Are you concerned about the energy efficiency of your HVAC system? And it doesn't look like we have a clear winner, although 42% of folks said somewhat concerned. But the least amount of folks, so 108 people voted. 25% of those people said very concerned. That was the least amount of folks. And 33% said not concerned at all, which I thought was interesting as well. I would have thought that would have been like less than 5% for homeowners to admit that they're just not concerned at all. They care about other things, I suppose, and they're just not concerned at all. Maybe their utilities are so low that they're just not concerned at all with energy efficiency whatsoever. So I thought that was telling. A third of the people that answered it basically said, I'm not concerned at all. But at the end of the day, again, we don't have like a clear out in front winner here. They're all close enough. They're all within 10 votes or so of each other. And I thought that was interesting. 42 is about 9 higher than 33, and then 25 is about 8 lower. So interesting on that front. Do you care about energy efficiency at all? When you're buying a heating and air system, I would have thought most people would at least be somewhat concerned. I can tell you at my company, we only sold high-end, not only, but we mostly sold high-end or, systems that were more efficient. And we were one of the only companies in this area that did it because a lot of them cut corners and they don't do things correctly and they continue to have problems because of it. So anyway, take that. There's actually a couple other companies that have popped up that are really leaning in. One in particular that's really leaned into the Daikin fit and some of the other higher end, more efficient inverter systems that are out there. So I can't talk smack now, but 3 years ago, that was my smack talk, right? Philip says the recent video about tech's need to learn the info is spot on. Thanks, Philip. I thought that was important. I think I gave 10 in that video, and number one was these techs just they don't even have the motivation. It feels like sometimes, oh, I've been doing this for so many years. I don't care how long you've been doing it. There are so many new things out right now that if you are not invested in trying to continue to learn this trade, if you're already a know-it-all, then you are behind the curve. And I'm witnessing it. I'm witnessing folks in our trade. I'm not going to, but I could say names right now of folks that I know that think they know it all, and they're not trying to get more knowledge. And because of that, they don't even know that they need a left-hand adapter for the new refrigerant tanks, or they don't even know why a constant CFM motor is louder in a high static application or whatever. Like they're just they know it all because they've been doing it forever, and they have no real motivation to learn this trade. So anyway, that was really my point in that part of the video. So looks like you guys are starting to heat up. Good to see everybody. Again, if you are tuning in, take a break from that election. We're not going to know anything anytime soon anyway. Ryan says, I have a single zoned central system and plan to install more single zone mini splits in the few rooms that I use in my house and just upgrade my central system to a non-inverter to save money. Just be careful with that. You can still oversize systems. Make sure you're keeping them on auto. But I think that you are ahead of the game on that. I think that there are Americans, because if we're talking outside of North America, that's what they all do anyway, right? But I think we're going to see more and more folks in America move that direction, and there's just so many more benefits behind it. You don't have duct loss, you don't have high static, you don't have as many breakdowns, you have better comfort, better humidity, better air, all of the perks of that. So I think you're ahead of the game on that. I don't know if we'll ever see a day where the majority of systems in this country are ductless. Could we eventually get to a point where more mini splits systems are being sold and no ductwork? I mean, but they may have ductwork, maybe, but I don't know that we'll ever get to a point where ductless is the majority. But you're kind of ahead of the game there. Bob says the utilities in Houston are very high, and during storms, we lose power sometimes for days. Oh my goodness. I've been to Houston multiple times and have not experienced a power outage there yet, but I can tell you the couple times that I have been there, it's been so hot, and I could not imagine, the power going out. So Philip says, I care about energy efficiency. California electricity is expensive, and having solar helps with inverter based systems. I think solar is really starting to kick in. I remember just last year they came out with that fully off the grid solar mini split system that you can get these days. I've seen those. We're seeing more and more folks look at solar than ever before. And I really think that solar reminds me of mini splits, because when mini splits first came into our country, no one wanted to be first in line. Then you started seeing people dip their toe, maybe put it in their bonus room or garage. And now you see folks that make comments like Ryan just did, where they're considering it as their primary option. They're seeing these systems be able to heat a home even when it's 5 degrees outside, right? And so they're seeing the advancements, and I think solar is the same way. I think as we move over the next decade, I bet solar is really going to it's just going to become a big player in the trades. You're going to see more and more solar. You're going to get to a point where you're going to see just as many solar companies as you are maybe even HVAC companies. Certainly more solar companies than generator companies. I don't think that's a far stretch, because I think we're getting close to that now anyway, right? Have you guys experienced that? Are you seeing more and more solar companies versus say 10 years ago? Imagine 10 years from now, they're just going to be popping up. They'll be more common than I think a standby generator on the home. I really do think that. Bob says, I did it again. Need my spell check. No worries, Bob. a lot of the stuff I read on here anyway, I've got to sift through, right? So I think I knew what you were saying anyway. Sorry, I skipped one there. Ryan says, I think that's better than redoing my ductwork for zoning for a communicating system. I want to control the temperature for a particular room or two to save an energy or more so for comfort. Um, and that's really the biggest thing, right? I mean, we could talk about how quiet they are, how well they operate, how much money they save, all that stuff, the comfort. But the main thing I we could all argue over what's more reliable, and we could all argue a bunch of different things. But the one thing you can never argue is the zoning capabilities that a mini split system provides, right? I mean, it is what it is. It is in its own zone, and there's nothing else on the market that probably even comes close to the zoning capabilities, right? Ryan says, I just want to micro control the rooms I use only. There you go. Synthetic Truth, welcome to the show. I'm not sure I've ever seen your name on here, so thank you for joining us. I used to be a sheet metal mechanic for the Department of Energy, then went to installing. Now I do scrapping. I just enjoy every single aspect of the trade. There is bottomless opportunities and learning experiences. I have to agree 100%. I feel like what's crazy to me is what you just described is another whole path that has been taken. Whereas I ended up, I started somewhere and I went a different path, and we all just there is bottomless opportunities. I think that's a really good observation and a good way to put it. I think it's a great trade. I've always joked and said, I'm sure if there is any other plumbers or electricians on here, they would love to hear this. But I've always joked and said, the folks that didn't go to college or didn't go to graduate school or go get their PhD, that would have been a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, that's the guys that get into HVAC and do well. um I don't know, that's might be a little harsh, but I've always joked and said that. Ryan says solar with battery backup is key to solar being really worth it, especially time of use energy rates. You can charge your batteries for cheap and use that stored energy during high energy rates. Sorry, I'm getting the hiccups. Great point, Ryan. Right. I mean, that's where we're going. Well, I mean, you just described it right there. Bob says, if you have a pond close to your home, geothermal may be a good option. I haven't seen many of the pond ones, although I've seen one. I've seen several of the geothermal systems that go underground, but is that a big thing where you're at, Bob? I know you're out there in Texas. Are ponds used more often for geothermal? The one system that I saw was probably arguably a more like, I don't want to say prehistoric or antiquated, but it wasn't a real complicated system. It was just a guy that kind of built his own makeshift geothermal type system. And I wouldn't say it was like super complicated or whatever. Um, but yeah, that's interesting. Ryan says, Josh, you have a pond. Why don't you use geothermal at your house? I live near a pond. I don't know how you know that. Maybe you've seen it in some of my other videos, but I do not own that pond. And nor do I want to own it. The guy that actually owns it, he is required by the state to do certain things to keep it maintained, and that's been a big pickle, and over who's going to pay for it and all that stuff. And I don't want to pay. I don't want to do that. But if I did own the pond, that would be an interesting option, wouldn't it? That would that's a YouTube video right there, dragging those loops out there into the pond. Bob says we did a few systems about 25 years ago. Yeah, the one that I saw was I don't think it was 25 years old, but it was close. I mean, I think it was every bit of getting close to 20 years old. I saw where he had drug a bunch of of loops out into the middle of a pond. So you said it once in a live stream. So I actually do own a pond, but it's more like a puddle. And then we live on a larger pond that someone else owns. So that puddle of a pond that we own, I'd say it's probably about, I don't know, 10 or 12 feet across and then maybe 15 feet long. So it's not real big at all. And it's a couple feet deep, maybe. I don't even think it's that deep. Um, but I definitely don't think it's big enough that we could do a geothermal system in it for sure. Plus, you used to stand on your deck and it had a pond in the background. Yep. 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 Um, or you're just stalking me. Or that, right? I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Um, I uh let's see. I'm just looking at our list here. So we did do the polls. There was something else I wanted to share with you guys. Bear with me here. Um Oh, I know what I wanted to show you guys. I wanted to show you I actually had a couple comments come in that I thought I would share because some of them were quite interesting. Now, how do I do that? I'm going to show you guys, see if I can show you guys this without showing you how the hot dogs are made. Here we go. Comments. Okay. So there was a couple comments. Oh, here's one in particular. So let me see if I can switch back to this. Share this tab. So hopefully you guys can see this. And so I try hard to keep up with the comments. I know I'm not good at it. I've gotten comments on it. One guy even got kind of ugly about it because I had made a comment in the video saying that if you were kind enough to like and comment on the video, that I would do my best to reply to all of those comments. And he got pretty upset when I didn't respond within an hour to his comment. But anyway, so I get all kinds of different comments. So like this person says my thermostat is reading the wrong setting, like it will be 10 p.m. at night and it should read as asleep, but instead it reads awake or returning. I have a thermostat on both floors and it's the same issue with both. Any idea what the issue is there? So not knowing which thermostat they have, it's simply that's got to be a programming issue that's just not been programmed correctly. I would guess. But I suppose there's always a possibility it could have a glitch. But anyway, the thing that I wanted, the real comment that I wanted to jump to is this person right here. They commented on the video I did where I talked about how Bosch is acquiring JCI and some of the other acquisitions that they're buying. And the person wrote Chinese buying American brands from underneath. And I wondered what because I got a little confused. I've always understood Bosch as being more of a European brand, a German brand, at least engineering. And I wonder, is it a Chinese brand now? Did a Chinese company buy the Bosch brand? Or at least now I know they make some of their products that like Medea produces some of the Bosch equipment, but did they purchase that name or license that name? And the and and this acquisition is actually a Chinese company buying JCI. I maybe they're mistaken or maybe either way I'd like some clarity on that. I wonder if any of you guys know what the heck they're talking about. Cuz that really confused me when I saw that. Um so anyway, back to our chat here. Ryan says, "What are your thoughts on geothermal compared to air source heat pumps?" Well, I think there's two main thoughts on that one, right? So the first thing is it's expensive to put in and it's more efficient, right? I mean, we've seen SEER ratings on some geothermal systems above 40. So it's definitely more efficient, but it's very expensive to install. And that's why when Barack Obama was president and he had those incentives for people to install geothermal systems, there were a lot of them being installed. Like you had people getting like $20,000 rebates to put a geothermal system in. I'm just don't hold me to that. That is something like that, you know. So don't sue me, people. But it was something like that. And it made sense from a math standpoint to maybe get a more expensive system because you're going to save so much. But when your utility bill with an air sourced heat pump is, let's just say it's $200 a month. Now some of you may say, oh, well, mine's 400 a month or whatever, or it's higher in certain times of the year. I hear you. I'm just trying to use like an example. So if your utility bills are, let's say I'll meet you in the middle, $300 a year, and buying, say, a geothermal system saves you half. So let's say it cuts that in half to $150 a year. So 150. Let's see if I can do this right. 150. And then let's say that system lasts you, let's say 15 years. So 15 and then 12 months. Am I doing my math right on that? So $150 times 12 months is $1,800 times 15 years. Well, that says 27 grand. So that's pretty close, right? I mean, that we're coming out better right there. But let's say 150, let's just say it's only 10 years times 12 months times 10 years. So that's 18 grand. So the extra investment would not make sense. Um, so it's close to breaking even is what it is. So if you're only saving $150 a month going to it's just so expensive. That's really what I think of it. And I definitely don't think the math makes sense if they want 40 grand to install it. Ryan says, doesn't mean a 20 grand rebate mean the contractor charges 20,000 more for the installation. That's probably true for some companies. Bob says geothermal gets very expensive when you have to dig a 200-foot hole per ton. Yep. That's the biggest ticket item, right? Is someone burying the loops. But the equipment ain't cheap either. Even if you're going to reuse loops, you see companies charging 20 or 30 grand to put a geothermal system in. And, you know, and the other thing is in their defense, air to air, heat pumps are, you see some companies these days charging quite a bit to put one of those in. So, I mean, you really just got to sit down and do some math there to figure it out. Bosch units are manufactured by Medea. Not sure they are Chinese company bought them. Not sure a Chinese company bought them. Hey, welcome to the show, Fisher. Yeah, so it's not uncommon for brands like Medea and a few others to manufacture equipment for other. It's sort of like you see all these companies that sell this junk online. More times than not, it is Medea or Gree or some other company that's actually manufactured that equipment. In fact, there's one company in particular that we've picked on our, because I just think that they're a very I don't want to mention their name, but I just don't think they're a very on the up and up company. I think that they are very deceitful. I'll say that. But they rebrand other folks' equipment. But if you Google them, then it'll pop up and say that they're an American company. And I just think that that's it's just dirty, be honest, I think most people would respect that and maybe want to do business with you. Hey, our stuff is made overseas, but we're going to provide the best support, or, something like that. But when you are just not setting the record straight, you know, my wife's texting me again. When you are just not setting the record straight on stuff like that, I just don't think it's very kind. Doesn't a 20,000, oh yeah, he already said that. Fisher says is now using R32 in new AC. Is now using R32 in new AC. I think you're asking, are we now using R32? And we can still get 410A equipment. Some companies still can. For the next 2 months, but starting January 1st, you will no longer be able to buy a full 410A system. You will have to switch to either R32 or 454B. Check out my video where I compared the two of them, and they are the new refrigerants. Bob says once I walked on a Philco water cooled AC, which was 28 years old, and all it needed was a new water valve. They don't make them like that anymore. I remember working on a York system that was made in 1978. And this was probably, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago. But it was still kicking. The board had gone out. I had to replace the board. And I told the guy, I was like, I'm not going to be able to find this board. I'm going to try. And by turn, I did find it. And I put a new board in it. And it was made in 1978, older than me. I thought that was kind of crazy. So York definitely doesn't make them like that anymore. Ryan says, like Bosch and Eco are manufactured by Medea, but have different smart controls that make them slightly different and unique. Bosch also, I think, has some unique compressors in their equipment compared to a lot of the other stuff that Medea makes. So I hear you on that. Companies can still install and sell 410A systems that are in stock, I think, pretty sure. Yeah, they can all the way up till January 1st. And then after January 1st, as I understand it, they will be able to buy a heat pump with 410A in it and a air handler that can control, work with 410A, but they can't be sold together. They can't be on the same ticket. Winky wink, right? I'm sure there are going to be people that just make two different tickets and still install the system like they would have. But supposedly the timeline is starting January 1st, 2026. That's when the light switch will be flipped, and we will have to be completely switched over to the new refrigerants 100%. So what will that look like for 410A equipment? What will that look like for those unit replacement warranties and things like that? Hopefully, companies will still be able to honor those well and maybe provide like a dry charged 410A unit or something like that. But right now, unless Hardy or ACA or what's the other one? It's like 3 different organizations in HVAC that will lobby and fight for us. But unless those folks are able to extend it another year or two, right now that's our timeline. January 1st, 2026, we're completely moved over to the A2L refrigerants. January 1st, 2025, you should be on new installations be completely moved over anyway. But that's what the timeline looks like. So again, looks like the numbers popped up again. Again, if you're here joining us, take a break from the election. We've only got a couple more minutes here anyway, but we won't know who's going to win anytime soon anyway. So, hang out with us. I've got a couple more comments to hit on. I got a couple more things I want to chat with you guys about. Feel free to drop any more questions you have. But I want to say that we all know there's some bad apples in our industry, some companies that make us all look bad. And if you know a good HVAC electrician or plumber company, feel free to drop their name and where they're located in the chat. Let's show some love to the good ones. And who knows, someone in your area may see your message and you might be able to send them a little more than love, maybe some business their way. So Fisher says, I just learned can use a relay to modify, use PC motor instead ECM motor Will it be a delay 1 minute to cool down the heat exchanger when the furnace turn off? Uh, that's a loaded question. But it will it just is all in how you wire it, right? So if that relay is controlling that motor and you hardwire it and it's controlled by the thermostat, well then the thermostat will control it. If it's controlled by the furnace, the terminal that comes off the board and has that sequence of operations, continuing to run that fan longer, uh, or delaying the turn on of the fan before the heat exchanger warms up, well, you've just got to wire it that way. So, but I know what you're talking about. I've seen guys do that before in certain situations. Ryan says, I would like a show that in the January you go to each major, mid-major brand's website and look at their new products and see what changed, if anything. I might be going to AHR Expo. I might not. Right now, to be honest with you, it's looking like I may not make it down there. But I've got a lot going on professionally, if I'm being honest with you. But but that will probably play a role in some of that too. When I make it to AHR, I get to see the new products that are coming. So anyway, I appreciate you guys joining us on election night. I know, you could be doing better things. You could be doing worse things like watching the election results. um, but I will say, and I think I mentioned this last week, there will be some Tuesday nights coming up that I will not make it. I know there's at least one in December, maybe one in January, and then one or two in February. So I just want to let you guys know, and I'll update the YouTube, community tab as I find those things out. So, that said, appreciate you guys. If you are not a subscriber, feel free to hit that subscribe button. That obviously helps us out. And then last but not least, hitting that like button also helps the algorithm, tells them that what we're talking about here matters, definitely matters to some folks. And the more folks that, hit that like button, the more likelihood that it could help somebody. So, Fisher says, I love your videos. I appreciate it, buddy. Appreciate you watching, appreciate all the support you guys have given us. And, I genuinely, really do appreciate it. That said, we will be back next week at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. By then, we should know who our next president is, and hopefully the dust has settled. And appreciate you guys. Have a great week. Make it a great week. We'll see you then. Take care.